A poor little girl makes a request to a young billionaire. All the other students will have their parents at the recital, but I won't. Can you come see me dance, please? What happens next is unbelievable. The clock tower read 4:15 when Rowan Hayes finally walked out of the county clerk's office. 3 hours to sort out what should have taken 30 minutes. His fingers still smelled of stale paper and stamp ink. Just one more signature, Mr. Hayes, the clerk had said for the 3rd time. The documents for his parents' house, time-yellowed papers that no one but him cared to organize. Rowan adjusted his tie, loosening the knot that seemed to be choking him. The sky was grey, threatening rain, perfect for his mood. At 42, he had everything money could buy. A house too big for one man, a car he rarely used, a company that grew with each passing year, and no one waiting for him anywhere. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Probably Rebecca, his assistant, reminding him of the investor meeting the next day. He ignored it. He'd had enough obligations for one day. His footsteps echoed on the narrow sidewalk as he walked back to where he had parked. This old neighborhood, with its small shops and exposed brick buildings, felt like a world apart from the financial district where he spent his days. He turned the corner, thinking about the pile of emails he would have to answer that night. The city noise seemed distant here, replaced by a silence that was almost strange for someone used to the frantic pace of business. Rowan checked his watch. There was still time to stop by the office before, "Sir, wait." A child's voice cut through his thoughts. Rowan turned as confused. A little girl was running toward him, brown hair in 2 uneven braids. A light blue dress that seemed too big for her small frame. She held the hem with one hand so she wouldn't trip. He looked around, searching for an adult who might be with her. No one in sight. The girl stopped in front of him, breathing fast from the effort. 5, maybe 6 years old. Large, dark eyes that seemed to see right through the surface. "Aren't you okay?" Rowan asked, instinctively crouching down to her level. The girl bit her lower lip. Her small hands clutched the hem of her dress, wrinkling the fabric. She looked at the ground, then at him, as if gathering all the courage in the world. "My name is Maisie," she said finally, her voice as small as she was. Rowan nodded, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to talking to children. "I go to school over there." She pointed to the brick building across the street. "We're practicing for a recital." Only then did Rowan notice the school, an old building, with large windows and an iron gate. A few children were still coming out, accompanied by waiting adults. "That must be very nice," he replied, feeling strangely out of place in the conversation. Maisie took a deep breath. Her eyes filled with a surprising determination for someone so small. "All the other students will have their parents at the recital, but I won't." She hesitated, her voice breaking for a moment. "My mum can't miss work." "Can you come see me dance, please?" The request hit Rowan like an unexpected blow. A wave of emotions he couldn't name rose in his chest, tightening his throat. Why him, a stranger, on the street? A man she had never seen before. Logic told him to politely decline, to explain that they didn't know each other, that there were rules and boundaries, that it didn't make sense. But there was something in her eyes, a loneliness he recognized immediately, a silent plea that went beyond the simple words. The heavy clouds finally delivered on their promise. Fat drops of rain began to fall, marking dark circles on the concrete sidewalk. "Maisie, come on now, it's starting to rain." A woman with her hair in a bun called from the school gate, waving urgently. The girl looked back, then at Rowan again. Expectation and fear mixed on her small face. He should say no. It was the sensible answer. "When is the recital?" he heard himself ask, surprising himself. Maisie's face lit up as if someone had switched on a light inside her. "Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, in the school auditorium," she replied, almost jumping with joy. "Promise you'll be there." The rain grew heavier, soaking the shoulders of his expensive suit, soaking Maisie's uneven braids. "I promise," Rowan said, not understanding why those words came so easily from his mouth. Maisie smiled, a smile that seemed too big for her small face, and ran back to the school, still holding the hem of her dress. Rowan stood in the rain, watching her go. Something had changed in those brief minutes. something he couldn't explain. On the way home, driving through the wet streets, he tried to understand why he had agreed, why a promise made to a strange child suddenly felt so important. Maybe it was just a moment of weakness, maybe it was fatigue, or maybe, he thought, as the city lights began to switch on against the dark sky, it was something deeper, something he had long forgotten. A part of him wanted to ignore what had happened, to pretend it never occurred, to go back to his orderly life of meetings and important decisions. But the image of Maisie's hopeful eyes remained, the simple, direct question, "Can you come see me dance, please?" In his spacious and impeccably decorated apartment, Rowan opened his digital calendar. Friday, 3 o'clock. He typed, "Recital School." He closed the laptop and stared out the window at the city stretching below, with its thousands of lights and stories. He felt strangely small, and at the same time, as if something important was just beginning. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock. A commitment that wasn't in his plans, a promise made in the rain to a little girl with uneven braids. Rowan's apartment took up the top floor of a sleek downtown building. Panoramic view, custom furniture, carefully selected works of art. A place featured in design magazines, but one that never truly felt like home. He dropped his keys on the entryway table and loosened his tie. The silence of the place greeted him as it always did, absolute and empty. "Lights," he said, and the entire apartment lit up automatically. At the bar in the living room, he poured himself a whiskey. The amber liquid swirled in the glass as he walked to the window. Outside, the city glistened in the rain. Thousands of lives happening simultaneously. Families having dinner, children doing homework, people sharing their day. He took a sip, feeling the warmth spread down his throat. "My mom can't miss work," Maisie's voice echoed in his mind. That simple sentence, spoken with an understanding no 5-year-old should possess. Rowan closed his eyes. The memory surfaced without warning. Himself at 6 repeating similar words to a concerned teacher, as if he understood, as if it were normal. Without finishing his drink, he went to his bedroom. In the back of the closet, behind rows of immaculate suits, was a dark wooden chest. The only thing he had brought from his childhood home when he sold it 3 years ago, after his mother's death. He hesitated for a moment. It had been a long time since he'd opened that box, perhaps because every object inside carried a weight he preferred not to feel. Finally, he knelt and lifted the lid. The smell of old paper and wood instantly transported him to another time. On top were the documents for the house where he grew up. Below, some school books, medals from academic competitions, his ticket to college, to the life he had built. Rowan carefully moved each layer aside until he found what he didn't even know he was looking for. A brown envelope, worn at the edges. Inside, photographs. A few of them. His mother rarely had the time or money to capture moments. The first photo showed a small apartment with peeling walls. He recognized the living room where he spent afternoons alone, waiting for his mother to come home from work. The second, his elementary school graduation. Him, serious, wearing an oversized, borrowed suit, his mother beside him, her young face already marked by exhaustion, but smiling with a pride that couldn't be contained. He paused at the third image, feeling the air catch in his throat for a moment. A small boy, with dark hair and big eyes, wearing a makeshift pirate costume. Beside him, a young woman in the grey uniform of a cleaning company. She was smiling, but her eyes revealed the weariness of someone who woke before sunrise and would only rest long after it set. Rowan closed his eyes, and the memory of that day came back in sharp focus, as if it had happened last week, not 36 years ago. "Mommy, you're going to come see me, right?" Little Rowan adjusted the cardboard eye patch in front of the cracked bathroom mirror. Sarah Hayes meticulously folded her clean uniform on the bed. Honey, She paused, her eyes avoiding his. "You know I really want to. The play is at 3. Everyone is going to be there." He spun around, making the cheap fabric cape whirl. "I'm Captain Hook. I have the most important lines." Sarah knelt, adjusting the collar of his shirt. "Rowan, look at me." Her voice was soft but serious. "If I miss work, we can't pay the rent. I will try. I swear I will. But I can't promise." He nodded, trying to look strong, grown up, the way he had to be ever since his father walked out the door 4 years earlier and never came back. "It's okay, Mom, I understand. My smart boy." She kissed his forehead. "Now come on, let me take a picture of you, all handsome. Then I'll drop you at Mrs. Miller's so she can take you to school." On the stage of the school auditorium, Rowan recited all his lines perfectly. His childish voice rang out strong, making the parents laugh at the right moments, applaud at the end of scenes. With every entrance, every exit, his eyes scanned the third row, where his mother had promised she would try to be. The chair remained empty throughout the entire performance. When the curtain fell and the children ran to their parents, he stayed on stage, still wearing the eye patch and cardboard hook, waiting. Mrs. Miller, the neighbor who had taken him, came to get him with a forced smile. "You were the best, Rowan, so proud. Come on, your mother is waiting at home." But Sarah wasn't home. She arrived 3 hours later, exhausted, with hastily disguised tear marks on her face. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. There was an emergency at the bank office. I had to clean everything before they opened tomorrow." She pulled a small chocolate bar from her pocket. "Look what I brought for you." He took the candy and smiled, pretending everything was fine. She hugged him tightly, and he felt her tears wet his hair. "One day it'll be different, my love. I promise. One day we won't have to choose between work and what's important." Rowan opened his eyes, returning to the present. His hand trembled slightly as he placed the photograph on his bed. The hardest part wasn't the memory of childhood disappointment. It was knowing that his mother had died carrying that guilt. The guilt of never being present for the moments that mattered, even though her absence wasn't a choice, but a necessity. The next day she was there when he woke up, sewing a small button that had fallen off the costume. She said she wanted to take a picture of him in the full outfit. In the image, he wasn't smiling. But she was there, beside him, in her uniform and her tired smile. That was the only picture they had together from a school performance. Rowan stood up, feeling a determination he hadn't experienced in years. He walked to the window again, looking out at the city he now knew so well, the city he had conquered, one contract at a time, one investment after another. "Sorry, my mom can't miss work." Maisie's voice returned, mingling with the memory of his own childish voice, saying the same words, feeling the same disappointment. He picked up his phone and called Rebecca. "I need you to cancel my appointments for tomorrow afternoon." "But Mr. Hayes, the meeting with the investors, cancel everything." "I have an unmissable appointment at 3. He hung up before she could protest. He went back to the bed and picked up the photograph again. He gently ran his finger over his mother's face, feeling a mix of longing and gratitude. In the absolute silence of his perfect apartment, he made a decision that came from the deepest part of his childhood memories. Maisie will not go through that. The little girl with uneven braids and an oversized dress would not know what it's like to look at the audience and see only empty chairs. She would not know the weight of understanding, so early that some promises are impossible to keep, not for a lack of love, but out of necessity. Tomorrow, at 3 o'clock, there would be someone in the audience for her. Rowan woke up before his alarm went off. A strange anxiety accompanied him through breakfast, the call with foreign investors, and the meeting with the finance department. He checked his watch every half hour, as if fearing time would slip through his fingers. At 2 in the afternoon, he cancelled the last meeting of the day. "Are you sure, Mr. Hayes?" Rebecca looked at him with concern. In 5 years as his assistant, she had never seen him change his schedule without an urgent professional reason. "Absolutely," he replied, already walking toward the elevator. "If anyone needs anything, I'm unavailable until tomorrow." In the car, he took the long way to the school. He needed to organize thoughts that even he didn't fully understand. Why had this unknown child's recital become so important? Why had he woken up thinking about it, as if it were an appointment on which something fundamental depended? The school parking lot was almost full when he arrived. Families walked in small groups toward the auditorium entrance. Mothers adjusted the ties on little boys, fathers carried modest bouquets of flowers. Grandmothers walked slowly, holding the hands of proud grandchildren. Rowan felt out of place in his expensive suit. He thought about just grabbing his blazer from the back seat, leaving the tie in the car. To look more casual, less corporate. But there was no time. It was 10 minutes to 3. At the entrance to the auditorium, a middle-aged woman was handing out printed programs. "Good afternoon. Which student's father are you?" she asked with a warm smile. The question caught him off guard. He cleared his throat, feeling strangely uncomfortable. "Actually, I'm a guest of Maisie. Maisie." Only then did he realize he didn't know the girl's last name. The woman frowned for a moment, then her face lit up with recognition. "Oh, Maisie Sullivan, of course, of course." She handed him a program. "She'll be so happy you came. You can go in. The seats aren't assigned." The auditorium was smaller than he had imagined. A modest stage, red curtains worn from use. About 100 chairs arranged in rows. Most were already occupied by families chatting excitedly, some taking pictures. Rowan looked for a discreet spot in the back, but something made him stop. He hadn't come all this way to hide. He walked down the center aisle and found an empty seat in the third row, from where he would be visible to the stage, to Maisie. The program in his hands indicated a dance performance by the early grades, followed by a short play. "The Enchanted Forest," said the title in colorful letters. He scanned the list of names until he found hers. Maisie Sullivan, Flower Fairy. As he waited, he observed the families around him. A father was teaching his young son how to use a camera. A mother nervously smoothed her hair, as if she were the one about to perform. Grandmothers commented on how much their grandchildren had grown. Small family rituals he had only ever watched from a distance his entire adult life. The lights dimmed, and a teacher walked onto the stage to welcome everyone. She talked about the months of work, asked for polite applause, and reminded everyone to silence their phones. When the curtain opened, Rowan leaned forward slightly. On stage, 12 small children formed a semicircle. They all wore costumes suggesting elements of nature: leaves, flowers, clouds. In the left corner, almost hidden behind a taller girl, was Maisie. Her blue dress had been replaced with another, a light pink one, with small fabric flowers sewn onto the hem. Her braids were neater today, tied with ribbons that matched her dress, but her bare feet moved restlessly, and her eyes scanned the audience with anxiety. Rowan felt a pang in his chest. He knew that look, the look of someone searching for a person who promised to be there. The music began, a children's melody about spring and friendship. The children started to move according to the rehearsed choreography, some with confidence, others with shyness. Maisie seemed focused on each step, her eyebrows furrowed with the effort of remembering the sequence. It was during the second movement that she saw him. Her eyes met his in the audience, and for a second she almost lost her rhythm. Then, her entire face transformed. A smile broke out, so pure and genuine that it seemed to light up not just her face, but the entire auditorium. Rowan smiled back, feeling a wave of something. It wasn't exactly happiness. It was more complex, as if a long closed door had been suddenly thrown open, letting light into a dark room. From that moment on, Maisie's dancing came alive. She performed each move with a joy that was contagious to the children around her. With every turn, every pause, her eyes sought his in the audience, come as if needing to confirm he was still there. And Rowan didn't look away for a single second. When the music ended and the applause began, he found himself clapping with an enthusiasm he didn't even show at his company's most successful meetings. The children exited for a costume change, and soon the play began. Maisie appeared again, now with a flower crown on her head and a wand with a star on the tip. Her character, the Flower Fairy, had only 2 lines, but she delivered them with surprising clarity for someone so small. Flowers need sun and rain to grow, but more than anything, they need love. As she raised her wand during her line, her eyes met Rowan's again. He gave a slight nod, a small silent encouragement. The performance lasted less than an hour. When the curtains closed for the last time and the house lights came up, parents stood, some holding bouquets, others cameras, all waiting for their little performers. Rowan remained seated for a moment. What should he do now? Wait for her to find him? Leave before the inevitable questions began? Who are you? What is your relationship to Maisie? There were no simple answers. Before he could decide, a small figure ran down the side aisle. Still wearing the crooked flower crown and holding the magic wand, Maisie approached, out of breath. "You came," she exclaimed, stopping in front of him. "You really came." Rowan felt a lump in his throat. He stood up from his seat and, without thinking, knelt to her level. "Of course I came, I promised. Didn't I?" Maisie nodded vigorously, and then, to Rowan's surprise, she took 2 steps forward and threw her arms around his neck in an unexpected hug. "I knew you would come," she whispered, so softly only he could hear. Something inside Rowan, something hard and cold that had been there for so long he barely noticed it anymore, seemed to crack, like thin ice under the spring sun. He felt an emotion he didn't remember existed, something primal and pure, a mix of protection, tenderness, and an old sadness finally acknowledged. Awkwardly, he returned the hug. "You danced beautifully," he said when she finally pulled away, "and your line in the play, and you memorized it perfectly." Maisie's smile widened even more, revealing a missing front tooth. "I practiced a lot. The teacher said I got better." "Maisie, where are you, sweetie?" a woman's voice called from the hallway. "That's Mrs. Wilson," Maisie explained. "I have to change. Will you wait? Please." "I'll be outside," Rowan replied, pointing to the exit, "on the bench in front of the school." She nodded seriously, as if they had just made an important agreement, and ran back down the side aisle. Rowan left the auditorium, walking past groups of families chatting animatedly. A strange feeling accompanied him, as if he were living someone else's life just for that afternoon. The wooden bench in front of the school was simple, worn by time and the seasons. Rowan sat, loosening his tie. The day was clear now, with no sign of the previous day's rain. On the empty playground, a swing moved slightly in the breeze. 15 minutes later, Maisie appeared at the school entrance. She had changed out of her costume and into the same blue dress from the day before. Her hair was down now, the flower crown gone. She carried a small purple backpack. She looked both ways before running across the schoolyard toward him. "I thought you'd left," she said, climbing onto the bench and sitting beside him. "I said I'd wait," he answered simply. For a few moments, they sat in silence. Rowan wasn't sure what to say. In business meetings, he always had the right words. With a 5-year-old, he felt completely unprepared. It was Maisie who broke the silence. "Mrs. Wilson asked who you were. I told her you were my friend." "That's fine, it's true." She swung her legs, which didn't reach the ground. Her pink sneaker had an untied shoelace. "Do you want me to tie your shoe?" Rowan offered. Maisie held out her foot, watching intently as he tied a firm knot in the lace. "Thank you," she said. Then, without transition, "I never met my dad. Mommy says he left before I was born. She works a lot to take care of me. I know it's hard." The childish frankness caught Rowan by surprise. There was no self-pity in her voice, just a simple statement of fact, like saying the sky is blue or the grass is green. He looked at his own hands, then at her. "I understand. My dad left too. My mom raised me all by herself. And she always said that studying was the only way to have a better life." Maisie looked at him with wide eyes, as if she had just discovered they shared the same secret name. "Did your mom work a lot too?" She used to," he corrected gently. "She's not here anymore." "Did she go to heaven?" "Yes. 3 years ago." Maisie seemed to consider this with the seriousness only children can muster for complex subjects. "Are you sad?" "Sometimes," Rowan admitted. "But I also remember the good things, like how she always managed to make a chocolate cake on my birthdays, even when we didn't have much money." "My mom makes chocolate cake too." "On my birthday and for Christmas?" Maisie smiled. Then her face grew serious again. She really wanted to come today. Really? She even cried when she told me she couldn't make it. "I'm sure she did," Rowan said, feeling a new respect for this woman he didn't know, but whose struggles felt so familiar. "She cleans big houses. And offices too. She says there's no shame in hands that clean." Maisie repeated the phrase with the intonation of someone quoting something she'd heard many times. "I wish she didn't have to work so hard." Rowan felt a lump form in his throat. "She does it because she loves you very much. You know that, don't you?" Maisie nodded, swinging her feet. When I grow up, I'm going to work and make lots of money. Then my mum can rest. Something about that childish determination, that pure and improbable promise, touched Rowan deeply. He saw himself, decades ago, making similar promises that time had turned bitter before he could fulfill them. "That's a very good plan," he said softly, "but don't forget to be a kid too. To play, to have fun." Maisie swung her feet, taking in every word. Her eyes held a wisdom that went beyond her 5 years. "Are you rich?" she asked suddenly. The direct question made him smile. "I have enough." "Did you study a lot? Like my mom says I should?" "Yes, I studied a lot. I worked hard." She nodded, as if confirming an important theory. "I knew it. You look important. With that suit and everything." Rowan couldn't help but laugh. How could a child see through the layers of sophistication he had so carefully constructed? "Being important isn't about suits, Maisie. It's about how you treat people." She seemed to consider this deeply. "Like how you treated me. Coming to see me dance when you didn't even know me." He nodded, surprised by her perception. "Something like that, yes." A teacher appeared at the school door, watching them with curiosity. Rowan realized that questions he couldn't answer would soon arise. "I think it's time for you to go back," he said gently. "Your teacher is waiting." Maisie looked at the school and nodded reluctantly. She hopped off the bench, adjusting the small backpack on her shoulders. "Will you come back someday?" The question hung between them, simple, direct, and filled with a hope Rowan didn't have the heart to disappoint. "If you want me to, yes." The smile that lit up her face was answer enough. Without warning, she came closer and briefly hugged his leg. "Bye, Mr. Rowan." "Bye, Maisie." He watched her run back to the school, stopping at the door to wave one last time. The teacher said something to her, and they both went inside. Rowan remained on the bench for a few more minutes. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the schoolyard. Inside him, something had shifted. An unexpected connection with an unknown child had broken a pattern of isolation built over years. As he walked back to his car, he remembered her words. "I knew you would come," a trust he didn't deserve, but which, somehow, made him feel worthy of it. On the Monday after the recital, Rowan Hayes left the office early. There was nothing on his schedule to justify it, no important meeting or pressing engagement, just a restlessness he couldn't name. Without telling anyone, he drove to Maisie's school. He parked across the street and waited, feeling strangely nervous. What was he doing here? What would he say if he saw her? The recital was over, his promise kept. There was no logical reason to return, and yet there he was. The bell rang at 3:30. Children began to pour out in small groups, some accompanied by adults, others alone with colorful backpacks on their shoulders. Rowan watched each face, searching for uneven braids and an oversized blue dress. When he finally saw her, Maisie was walking alone, carrying the same faded purple backpack. She seemed smaller than he remembered, vulnerable among the other children. She crossed the schoolyard slowly, looking at the ground as if lost in thought. Something in her posture, the slightly slumped shoulders, the dragging feet, made Rowan get out of the car without a second thought. "Maisie," he called, crossing the street. She lifted her face, confused for a moment. Then her eyes lit up with recognition, and a smile completely transformed her expression. "Mr. Rowan, you came back," he nodded, feeling suddenly shy in the face of her pure joy. "I thought I'd see how you were doing after the recital." "It was a big day." Maisie skipped over to him, her previous sadness completely forgotten. "Mrs. Wilson said I was the best flower fairy she's ever seen, and that my dancing was perfect." "She's right," Rowan agreed, smiling. "You were incredible." Maisie looked toward the bench where they had talked on Friday. "Can we sit there again? I have to wait for Mrs. Miller. She takes me home when my mom is working." Mrs. Miller. Rowan remembered the neighbor who used to take him home from school when his own mother couldn't. Some patterns seemed to repeat across generations. "Of course," he replied, following her to the bench. Maisie climbed up and sat down, swinging her legs. The backpack beside her looked too heavy for her small shoulders. "Vice, how was school today?" Rowan asked, realizing he had no idea how to start a conversation with a child. It was good. We learned about animals that sleep all winter. Hibernation. She pronounced the word carefully, proud of her new knowledge. What about you? What do you do? The direct question caught him by surprise. I work in an office. I own a company. What kind of company? Her eyes shone with genuine curiosity. Investments. I help people and other companies grow. He realized there was no way to explain private equity to a 5-year-old. Is it nice? Do you like it? Rowan hesitated. No one had asked him that question in years. If he liked what he did, people just assumed he did. Or that it didn't matter, as long as it was profitable. Most of the time, yes, he answered honestly. But some days are complicated. Maisie nodded seriously, as if she perfectly understood the weight of complicated days. When I'm sad at school, Mrs. Wilson says to think about good things, like ice cream or puppies. Rowan couldn't suppress a smile. Says that's good advice. They sat in silence for a moment, watching other children still leaving the school. Some parents waved at Maisie, looking curiously at Rowan. There's Mrs. Miller, Maisie said suddenly, pointing to an elderly woman walking slowly toward the school. She's very old, so she walks slow. Rowan watched the woman approach, leaning on a cane. She looked to be at least 80. Maisie, dear, Mrs. Miller called when she finally reached the gate. Her blue eyes, framed by deep wrinkles, examined Rowan with suspicion. Who's your friend? This is Mr. Rowan, Maisie introduced, jumping off the bench. He came to my recital because Mommy couldn't. Mrs. Miller's expression softened slightly. Ah, yes. Laurel mentioned someone had been kind to you. She extended a wrinkled hand. Martha Miller, I'm their neighbor. Rowan shook her hand gently, afraid he might hurt her. Rowan Hayes, a pleasure to meet you. Is Mr. Hayes walking with us, Maisie? Before Rowan could answer, Maisie interjected, Can he, Mrs. Miller, please? He can see our house. The eagerness on the little girl's face was evident. Martha Miller cast an appraising look at Rowan, as if trying to determine his intentions. If Mr. Hayes would like to, I don't see why not, she said finally. But I need to go slowly. These legs aren't what they used to be. Rowan checked his watch. He had a video conference in an hour, but something inside him, something stronger than professional obligations, made him nod. It would be a pleasure. The walk to Maisie's apartment was short, but made longer by Mrs. Miller's slow pace. They crossed a few streets in a modest neighborhood, where old buildings mixed with small local businesses. Maisie skipped ahead, occasionally returning to check if the adults were keeping up. She's a good girl, Martha commented as they walked. Laurel does the best she can, working in those houses all day. It isn't easy for either of them. How long have you known them? Since Laurel moved into the building when Maisie was just a few months old. A young woman alone with a baby. I figured she needed help. She smiled at a distant memory. Now look at us, 5 years later, and I'm still picking Maisie up from school 3 times a week. Rowan felt a growing admiration for the old woman. People helping people, creating small support networks, something he had forgotten in his world of contracts and transactions. Time we're here, Maisie announced, stopping in front of an old 3-story building with exposed brick and an iron fire escape on the side. We live on the 2nd floor. Martha took a key from her pocket. I'll go up first to open the door. Maisie, show Mr. Hayes our garden in the meantime. As the old woman slowly climbed the stairs, Maisie pulled Rowan by the hand to a small patch of dirt next to the building. Look, I planted these flowers with Mommy on my birthday. She pointed to some daisies growing in a makeshift flower bed made of painted tires. They're beautiful, Rowan commented, genuinely impressed by the small oasis of color in the middle of the concrete. When I grow up, I want to have a huge garden with all the flowers in the world. She touched a petal gently. And I also want to be a doctor, to help sick people get better. The contrast between the two dreams, one so simple, the other so ambitious, touched Rowan deeply. You can come up now, Martha called from the 2nd floor landing. The apartment was small, but impeccably clean and organized. A living room that also served as a kitchen, a narrow hallway that likely led to 2 small bedrooms. Simple but well-chosen curtains softened the light coming through the windows. On a shelf, photos of Maisie at different ages. "Have a seat, Mr. Hayes," Martha offered, gesturing to the sofa. "I'll make some tea while Maisie changes." Maisie ran to what must have been her room, returning minutes later with a drawing in her hand. "I made this today at school. It's for you." On the paper, stick figures represented two people holding hands, one small, with long hair, the other tall, wearing what looked like a suit. Above, written in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for coming to see me." Rowan held the drawing carefully, as if it were a valuable document. "It's beautiful, Maisie." "Thank you." Martha returned with 2 cups of tea and a glass of juice for Maisie. "Laurel should be home in an hour or so. She's working at houses in the Westview community today." Westview, the luxury gated community where 3 of his executives lived, where elegant parties were held on weekends, served by teams of invisible staff who ensured everything ran perfectly. "Mrs. Miller, can I show Mr. Rowan my room?" Maisie asked after drinking half her juice in one go. Martha hesitated, looking at Rowan. "If Mr. Hayes would like to see..." Rowan nodded, feeling it would be an offense to refuse. He followed Maisie down the narrow hallway to a small but cozy room. A bed with a floral bedspread, a shelf with a few children's books, and colorful drawings on the walls. Next to the bed, a small table served as a desk, with colored pencils organized in a can. "This is where I study," she explained with pride. "Mommy says it's important to have a special place just for studying." Something about the simple, organized space reminded Rowan of his own childhood. The makeshift desk made of crates, the pencils carefully sharpened to last longer, the effort to create a study environment, even with so little. "Your mom is right," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. My study space wasn't even half as nice as yours when I was your age." Maisie's eyes widened with surprise. "Really? You didn't have a nice desk?" Rowan shook his head, feeling it was time to share more of himself with her. "I wasn't always rich, Maisie. When I was little, my mom cleaned houses and offices. She didn't get to study, but she always said that if I studied and worked hard, I'd have a better future." I believed her. "I worked very hard, and today I have my own company. I made it in life." Maisie stared at him, absorbing every word. He could almost see the gears turning in her young mind, connecting his story with her own. "So if I study really hard, I can be whatever I want too?" The question was simple but loaded with hope. Rowan knew reality was more complex, that effort didn't always guarantee success, that there were structural obstacles, prejudices, systemic inequalities. But looking into those trusting eyes, he couldn't offer anything less than certainty. "You can." "I'm sure of it." She took a deep breath, as if making an important decision. "I want to be a doctor. I want to help people get better." The dream, declared with such conviction by a 5-year-old, made Rowan smile, not with condescension, but with a pride he didn't know he could feel for someone he barely knew. "You're going to be an amazing doctor, Maisie." In the following days, an unexpected routine was established. Rowan rearranged his schedule to be free at 3:30 on 3 days a week. His driver would drop him off near the school, and he would wait for Maisie on the same bench. Sometimes they would walk together to her apartment, where Mrs. Miller would prepare tea and cookies. Other times, when the weather allowed, they would stay on the bench talking until Martha came to get her. The conversations ranged from simple topics, what Maisie had learned that day, which animals she liked, her favorite color, to surprisingly deep questions for such a young child. "Why do some people have so much and others have so little?" she asked one afternoon, as they watched a luxury car drive by. Rowan thought carefully before answering. "It's complicated, Maisie. Sometimes it's because some people have more opportunities. Other times, it's because the world isn't always fair. And how do we make the world fairer?" The question caught him off guard. He, who dealt with millions daily, rarely thought in terms of fairness, only in terms of efficiency, return, growth. "By helping each other, I guess. By sharing what we have." She nodded, satisfied with the answer. Rebecca, his assistant, began to notice the changes in his schedule. Any new important client on Monday, Wednesday and Friday afternoons? She asked with professional curiosity. Something like that, Rowan answered vaguely. A long-term investment. In the second week that he started noticing details that had initially escaped him. Maisie's notebook was almost out of pages. Her pencils were too short to be held comfortably. And her sneakers, the same pink ones with the laces he had tied on the first day, were clearly too tight. On the Friday of that week, Rowan arrived at the bench with 2 large bags and a new backpack slung over his shoulder. "What's that?" Maisie asked, running to him with wide eyes. "Oh, a few things I thought you might like," he replied casually, as if he hadn't spent his entire lunch break in a school supply store carefully selecting each item. They sat on the bench, and Rowan began to pull items from the bags. Colourful notebooks with animal covers, pencil cases with star-shaped zippers, coloured pencils, crayons, and markers. Children's books about science, nature, and medicine for kids. A new lunchbox with a floral print. And finally, a pair of purple sneakers, the same colour as the backpack she liked so much. "I tried on a few sizes when I bought them, but if they don't fit, we can exchange them," he explained, as Maisie looked at everything with an expression of pure astonishment. She slowly ran her hand over each item, as if afraid they would disappear at her touch. When she got to the shoes, she held them against her chest and, to Rowan's surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "Mine were getting too tight," she said in a small voice, "but Mommy didn't have money to buy new ones. She always says studying is more important. That if I study and work hard, I'll have a better life." Rowan felt a lump in his throat. The dignity of this mother who, even with limited resources, prioritized her daughter's education over basic comfort, touched him deeply. "And she's right," he said, swallowing hard. "You're going to have a beautiful life. I believe in you." Maisie began to cry softly, still clutching the shoes to her chest like a precious treasure. "I promise I'll study really hard," she said between sobs. Rowan didn't know what to do in the face of her tears. Awkwardly, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, you don't have to cry. It's just some school supplies." But they both knew it wasn't just some school supplies. It was recognition, it was possibility. It was someone saying, "I see you and your potential." That afternoon, when Mrs. Miller came to pick up Maisie, her eyes also filled with tears when she saw the gifts. She squeezed Rowan's hand with more strength than he thought possible for such a frail old woman. "God bless you, son," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means." As he watched them walk away, Maisie with her new backpack on, skipping in her new shoes, Mrs. Miller walking slowly beside her, Rowan realized he was wrong. He knew exactly what it meant. Because once, a long time ago, he had been that child with tight shoes and dreams too big for his small world. The difference was that Maisie wouldn't be alone on her journey, not if he could help it. Saturday dawned with a clear sky, unlike the rain that had marked the first meeting between Rowan and Maisie. He woke earlier than usual, even for a weekend. A different energy had been with him lately, something that not even long hours at the office could erase. After breakfast, he answered some urgent emails and checked the stock market on his tablet. His thoughts, however, were far from the numbers on the screen. At 2 in the afternoon, he grabbed his car keys and left. It had become a ritual in recent days. The route to Maisie's school was already etched in his memory. Every turn, every traffic light, every building along the way. As he drove, he thought of the colourful notebooks and the new shoes, of Maisie's smile upon receiving them, of the whispered promise through tears. "I promise I'll study really hard." That child had awakened something dormant within him. A part that believed small gestures could make a difference. When he arrived at the school, he parked in the same spot as always. The yard was almost empty that Saturday, just a few children playing under the supervision of monitors in an extra activity. On the bench where they used to talk, a small figure waited, swinging legs that didn't reach the ground. Maisie spotted him before he even crossed the gate. Her face lit up with that smile Rowan already knew well. She jumped off the bench and ran towards him, wearing the new shoes he had given her. "Mr. Rowan, you came." "Like always," he replied, smiling. "We had a plan, didn't we?" Maisie nodded, adjusting the new backpack on her shoulders. She looked different today. Her hair was in a neat ponytail, not the usual uneven braids. She wore a dress Rowan hadn't seen before, with small flowers embroidered on the collar. "You look very pretty today," he commented. Maisie twirled, making the skirt of her dress spin. "Mommy did my hair special. And this dress was my cousin's, but it got too small for her." They walked to the bench and sat down as they did every day. But there was something different about Maisie today. She seemed restless, fiddling with the clasp of the new lunchbox she carried. "Is everything okay?" Rowan asked, noticing her agitation. "Yes," she answered quickly. Then she bit her lip, as she did when she was nervous. "I wanted to ask you something." "You can ask me anything, Maisie." She took a deep breath, gathering courage just as she had on the day she first approached him. "My mum wanted to meet you. She said she needs to thank you for what you gave me. Can you come over to our house today?" The question caught Rowan by surprise. In all these days, he had thought a lot about Maisie's mother, the woman raising such a special child on her own, who worked in luxury homes to secure her daughter's future. But he had never really considered meeting her. "Is your mum home today?" he asked, realizing it was Saturday. "Yes. She only works part-time on Saturdays. She got home after lunch." Maisie's eyes were full of expectation. Rowan knew there was no other possible answer. "Of course, I can. I would love to meet your mother." Maisie's face lit up with pure joy. She jumped off the bench, pulling him by the hand. "Let's go then, she made cake." Rowan laughed at her enthusiasm. He let himself be led out of the school gates, walking side by side with Maisie through the streets of the simple neighborhood. It was different walking this path without the slow presence of Mrs. Miller. Maisie skipped ahead, then came back, pointing to places that seemed ordinary but came to life in her stories. "That's Mr. Rossi's bakery. He gives me a little bread roll when Mommy buys bread on Sunday." She pointed to a small corner bakery with a faded red awning. "A few blocks later, this is where I saw an orange kitten once. I wanted to take it home, but Mommy said our building doesn't allow pets." With each new block, a new story. The small market where her mother bought fruit when it was on sale. The newsstand where the owner always saved used comic books for Maisie to flip through. The neighborhood, through her eyes, was not just a collection of old buildings and modest shops. It was a world full of good people, small kindnesses, and important memories. "At school, the teacher asked us to draw our favorite place," Maisie said as they waited to cross a street. "A lot of kids drew parks or beaches. I drew our street." "Why is this your favorite place?" Rowan asked, genuinely curious. "Because I know everyone, and everyone knows us." The simple answer carried a wisdom that many adults take a lifetime to understand: community, belonging. Things Rowan's money had never bought him in his luxury condos, where he barely knew his neighbors. When they turned the corner onto Maisie's street, she squeezed Rowan's hand tighter. "I'm happy you're going to meet my mom," she said in a low, almost confidential voice. "She works a lot, you know. But she always reads me stories before I go to sleep, even when she's tired." Rowan felt a lump in his throat. He remembered his own mother, doing the same after exhausting days of work. "She sounds like an amazing mom," he commented. "The best in the world," Maisie confirmed with absolute certainty. They stopped in front of the exposed brick building. 3 floors, an iron fire escape on the side, the small garden with daisies growing in painted tires. It looked different in the daylight, more welcoming than the first time Rowan had seen it. Maisie let go of his hand and ran to the entrance. "Come on! It's on the 2nd floor!" Rowan took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation. He was about to meet the woman who was single-handedly raising one of the most special children he had ever encountered. He was about to enter a world very different from his own, but one that, somehow, felt increasingly familiar. With a final glance at the small daisy garden, he followed Maisie inside the building. The building's staircase was narrow, with steps worn down by time. Maisie hopped up 2 steps at a time, while Rowan followed at a more restrained pace. The thin metal handrail was slightly wobbly under his hand. "This is it," Maisie announced when they reached the 2nd floor. The hallway was short, with only 4 doors, 2 on each side. She ran to the 2nd door on the right and knocked 3 times in a sequence that seemed to be a code between mother and daughter. "Mommy, we're here." Rowan straightened his blazer, feeling strangely nervous. He was a man accustomed to meetings with CEOs and billionaire investors, But here, in front of this simple door, his heart was beating faster than usual. The door opened, and for the first time, Rowan saw Maisie's mother. Laurel Sullivan was younger than he had imagined, perhaps just over 30, brown hair like her daughter's, tied in a simple bun, large, expressive eyes, with small lines of fatigue at the corners. She wore faded jeans and a light green blouse, and her hands held a dish towel as if she had been interrupted in the middle of a household chore. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice hesitant, a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. There was something in her face, a quiet dignity, a restrained strength that immediately reminded Rowan of his own mother. The same expression of someone who carried the world on her shoulders without complaint. "Mommy, this is Rowan." Maisie hurried to introduce, jumping with excitement. "He's the one who came to see me dance." Laurel opened the door wider, inviting them in with a silent gesture. Her eyes studied Rowan with a mixture of curiosity and caution, the natural reaction of a single mother to a stranger who had somehow entered her daughter's life. The apartment, seen during the day, revealed itself to be even smaller than Rowan remembered from his first visit, but also cozier. The afternoon light streamed through windows with simple curtains, illuminating walls painted a soft shade of yellow. There were plants in makeshift pots, pictures made by Maisie hung with care, and a small bookshelf with books organized by size. It was a modest home, but every detail spoke of care and affection. The smell of freshly baked cake filled the air. On the small kitchen table, plates and cups were arranged on a floral tablecloth. "I made some coffee," Laurel said, still holding the dish towel like a shield. "It's nothing special, but—" "Mommy makes the best cake in the world," Maisie interrupted, dropping her backpack on the sofa and running to her mother. "She woke up early just to make it today." A soft blush colored Laurel's cheeks. She ran a hand through her daughter's hair in an automatic gesture of affection. "Maisie, let Mr. Hayes breathe for a moment." "Rowan, please," he corrected gently. "No formalities." Laurel nodded, still uncomfortable. There was a tension in her shoulders, as if she didn't know exactly how to act in this unexpected situation. "Please, have a seat," she offered, gesturing to the small sofa. "I'll serve the coffee." As Laurel moved around the kitchen, Maisie excitedly opened her backpack and began to pull out every item Rowan had given her. "Look what he gave me. It's a new backpack, notebooks, shoes, everything brand new." She spread the treasures on the sofa like a little merchant displaying her most precious goods. The colorful notebooks, the pencil case with pencils of every color, the lunchbox with flower designs, each item presented with childish reverence. Laurel watched from the kitchen, her hands paused in the middle of cutting the cake. Her eyes, Rowan noticed, were moist. "Look, Mommy, there's even a book about doctors," Maisie continued, showing a children's book about professions, "because I told Mr. Rowan I want to be a doctor when I grow up." "It's a wonderful dream," Rowan commented, trying to ease the mood. "She told me with such conviction that I have no doubt she'll achieve it." Laurel returned with a tray, placing it on the coffee table. Her hands were trembling slightly. I don't know how to thank you," she said finally, her voice low. "I never thought anyone would do this for us." There was a vulnerability in her words that struck Rowan deeply. It wasn't just gratitude. It was genuine surprise at an unexpected act of kindness, as if life had taught Laurel not to expect anything from anyone. "There's no need to thank me," he replied calmly. "You two remind me of who I used to be, and of what truly matters." A silence settled between them, filled only by Maisie's excited voice as she continued to show off her treasures. "Maisie, honey," Laurel interrupted gently, "why don't you go put your new supplies on the shelf in your room while we talk for a bit?" The girl looked from one adult to the other, clearly reluctant to miss any part of the interaction. "But I want to stay here with you, just for a few minutes," Laurel promised. "Then you can come back and we can eat cake together." With a dramatic sigh that only children can produce, Maisie gathered her belongings and walked slowly down the hall, looking back several times as if fearing Rowan might disappear during her absence. When they were alone, Laurel poured coffee into simple but well-kept ceramic cups. "I'm sorry we don't have much to offer," she said, handing a cup to Rowan. "We're not used to having visitors." "It's perfect," he assured her, accepting the cup. "The cake smells wonderful." Laurel sat in the opposite armchair, her back straight, her hands resting in her lap. There was a natural elegance to her movements, a dignity that difficult circumstances had not managed to diminish. "Maisie won't stop talking about you," she began, her eyes studying Rowan's face, "about how you went to see her dance when I couldn't be there, about the conversations on the school bench, about how you also grew up with a mother who worked very hard." There was an unasked question in her words. "Who are you and why are you doing this?" "It happened unexpectedly," Rowan explained, feeling the need for clarity. "I was leaving the clerk's office when Maisie approached me. She asked me to go to the recital because you couldn't make it. Something about her, in her courage to ask a stranger for help. It touched me deeply." Laurel nodded slowly, absorbing the explanation. "She's always been like that, determined. Sometimes I feel like she was born with the soul of someone much older." A soft smile lit up her tired face. "When she was only 4, she said she was going to fix people when she grew up, because she saw a nurse taking care of a little old man in line at the clinic." Rowan smiled, picturing the scene. "She told me about her dream of being a doctor. It's an admirable goal." "It's an expensive dream," Laurel replied, the reality heavy in her voice. "But I do what I can not to crush that hope. She deserves to dream big." There was another moment of silence, more comfortable than the last. Rowan tasted the coffee, strong and simple, but well made. "Why do you keep seeing my daughter?" Laurel asked finally, the direct question surprising Rowan. "Don't get me wrong, I'm eternally grateful for your kindness, but I can't understand why. Why would a man like you spend his free time with a child he just met?" The question was fair. In her place, Rowan would probably have the same doubts, the same concerns. "Because she reminds me of myself," he answered honestly. "Because every time I see her, I remember a boy who also dreamed big, even when the world seemed too small for dreams of that size. Because Maisie has something special, something that deserves to be nurtured." Laurel studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see beyond the words, searching for some hidden motive. What she found seemed to satisfy her, because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "She says you have a company, that you made it in life, as she puts it." Rowan nodded. "Hayes Investments. We work with investments and business development." Laurel's eyes widened slightly, and she placed her cup on the table carefully, as if suddenly afraid she might break it. "Hayes Investments? In the Horizon Tower, downtown?" It was Rowan's turn to be surprised. "Yes, exactly. Do you know it?" Laurel took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Her fingers toyed nervously with the edge of the dish towel she was still holding. "Do I work as a cleaner in your company's building?" she said finally, her voice low, laden with weariness and dignity. "I go in through the back every day. Nobody knows my name. I never had the chance to go to school. I just want Maisie to have a better fate than mine. For her to have chances I never had." The revelation hit Rowan like a physical blow. A coincidence that didn't feel like a coincidence at all. Every morning, as he went up in the main elevator, greeting executives and investors, Laurel was entering through the back, invisible to everyone, including him. Two such different lives, now connected by a 5-year-old girl and her uneven braids. Rowan felt his heart clench, remembering his own mother, also exhausted, also full of unfulfilled dreams. Sarah Hayes had died at 56, her body worn out by decades of physical labor, never having had the chance to enjoy the prosperity her son had finally achieved. "When did you start working there?" he asked, trying to process the information. "Almost 3 years ago. I work for the contracted cleaning company, Clean Pro." Laurel smiled without humor. "Ironic, isn't it? Your building is where I work 6 days a week, and I didn't even know who you were until Maisie brought you here." In the hallway, they heard Maisie's light footsteps returning. Laurel shot Rowan a look that clearly said, "Don't mention this in front of her." "Can I come back now?" Maisie asked, appearing at the living room entrance. "I put everything away neatly, just like you taught me, Mommy." "Of course, sweetie," Laurel replied, quickly composing herself. "Shall we have some cake?" Maisie ran to the sofa, sitting next to Rowan with the ease of someone who has known him for years, not weeks. "Mr. Rowan told me he didn't have a dad when he was little either," she said, as Laurel cut the cake. "Just like me. And his mum worked a lot. Just like you, Mommy. Laurel handed a plate of cake to her daughter, her eyes meeting Rowan's for a brief moment, a look of shared understanding. Some children only have a mum, others only a dad, and some have both, Laurel explained softly. The important thing is to have someone who loves you, no matter what the family looks like. And I have you, Maisie declared with absolute certainty, and now I have Mr. Rowan too. The simplicity of the declaration hung in the air between the adults. Rowan felt the weight of Maisie's innocent trust, a trust he wasn't sure he deserved, but which somehow he was determined to honor. "The cake is delicious," he commented, trying to lighten the moment. "My grandmother's recipe," Laurel replied, visibly more relaxed now that the conversation was shifting to lighter topics. "Maisie loves to help mix the batter. I crack the eggs," the girl announced proudly, "and I almost never get shells in it." The conversation flowed more easily after that. Maisie dominated most of it, telling stories from school, describing her favorite drawings in detail, asking Rowan if he also liked chocolate ice cream. As he watched her interact with her daughter, Rowan noticed how Laurel changed in Maisie's presence. The exhaustion was still there, in the shadows under her eyes, in her slightly stooped posture. But there was also a light, an energy that seemed to come from a deep place of love. Every small interaction, the gentle hand fixing Maisie's hair, the patient smile at the endless stories, the genuine attention to her daughter's every word, showed a mother determined to give her best, even when the best possible was far less than she would have liked. At some point, while Maisie was showing Rowan a drawing hung on the wall, their eyes met again. There was a silent understanding between them now, a bridge built on shared experiences, even if lived in different times and circumstances. The afternoon wore on, and the sun began to set, casting a golden light through the simple curtains. On his expensive watch, Rowan noticed that nearly 2 hours had passed, time he would normally dedicate to reports or business calls. Strangely, it was 2 hours he hadn't felt pass. "I think it's getting late," he said finally, placing his empty cup on the table. "I don't want to overstay my welcome." "Don't go yet," Maisie protested immediately. "I haven't even shown you my collection of colored rocks." "Maisie," Laurel gently chided, "Mr. Rowan must have other plans." "Actually, I don't," he admitted, surprising himself, "but I don't want to be a bother." "You're not a bother," Laurel replied, and there was a sincerity in her voice that hadn't been there at the beginning of the visit. "Stay a little longer if you'd like. If Maisie would be happy." It wasn't just the mention of Maisie's happiness that made him accept the invitation to stay. It was also something in Laurel's gaze, a look that suggested that maybe, just maybe, his presence was welcomed by more than just Maisie. "In that case, I would love to see this rock collection," he said, settling back down. Maisie's smile lit up the whole room as she ran to fetch her treasure. Laurel watched her daughter disappear down the hall, then turned to Rowan with a serious but kind expression. "You've brought something special into her life," she said softly, "and something that I, with all my love, couldn't give her alone." The simple words, spoken with such sincerity, touched Rowan more deeply than any elaborate speech of thanks. And in that moment, sitting on a worn-out sofa in a modest apartment, with the setting sun illuminating the carefully painted walls, he knew he had found something his money could never buy, a place where he truly mattered. The afternoon wore on as Maisie showed Rowan every detail of her small world. After the colored rock collection came the sticker album she kept carefully in a shoebox, followed by drawings from when she was a baby, as she referred to the period just 2 years ago. Laurel watched the interaction with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. There was gratitude, certainly, also a twinge of concern, the natural instinct of a mother protecting her young. But there was something more, something like hope, a feeling she rarely allowed herself to feel. "It's getting late," she finally said, noticing that the sky outside the window was already darkening. "Maisie, it's almost bath time." "5 more minutes, please," the girl begged, in the middle of an elaborate explanation of how she had found a perfectly round rock in the park. "I think your mum is right," Rowan agreed, gently placing the rock back in its box. "I've taken up too much of your time today." Maisie pouted with disappointment but didn't protest. Carefully, she put away her collection of treasures and stood up. "Will you come back another day?" she asked, looking at Rowan with those big, hopeful eyes he could no longer refuse. "If your mother allows it, yes." They both looked at Laurel, who nodded with a small smile. "Of course you can come back. Maisie would love that." "Yay." The girl gave a little jump of joy. "Can I go take my bath now, Mommy? The faster I go to sleep, the faster the day Mr. Rowan comes back will arrive." Laurel laughed softly, a sound Rowan realized was rare and precious. "Go on then. I've already put your towel in the bathroom. Brush your teeth well, I'm watching." Maisie ran to give Rowan a quick hug, then disappeared down the hall. Seconds later, they heard the sound of water starting to fill the tub. A comfortable silence settled between the adults. Laurel began to collect the used cups and plates, moving with the efficiency of someone accustomed to making every minute count. "Let me help," Rowan offered, standing up to grab the last items from the table. In the small kitchen, side by side, they worked in silence for a few moments. Laurel washed, Rowan dried, a domestic choreography he hadn't practiced in years, since the days of sharing a tiny apartment with college roommates, nor before success arrived. "She really likes you," Laurel commented finally, handing him a wet plate. "I've never seen her open up like this with a stranger." "I don't feel like a stranger with her," Rowan admitted. "It's strange, but it feels like I've known her for much longer." Laurel nodded, as if she understood exactly what he meant. "Maisie has that effect on people. Sometimes I wonder where all that light comes from. Certainly not from me, I've always been more reserved." "You underestimate yourself," Rowan replied gently. "It's clear you've created an environment of safety and love for her to flourish like this." Laurel's hands paused for a moment in the soapy water. She wasn't used to receiving compliments on her mothering. Usually, she only heard veiled comments about how hard it must be to raise a daughter alone, or invasive questions about where the girl's father is. "I do the best I can," she said simply, returning to washing the silverware. When they finished, Laurel dried her hands on the dish towel she carried almost like a charm. The same one she was holding when she opened the door to welcome them hours earlier. "Coffee?" she offered, moving to turn on the coffee maker. "I'd love some," Rowan replied, even though he had already had more coffee that afternoon than in a full day at the office. As the water heated, they returned to the living room. From the bathroom came the cheerful sounds of Maisie humming as she bathed, a children's tune about stars and moons. Rowan looked around, taking in the details of the apartment he hadn't noticed before. A crack in the ceiling, disguised by careful painting. The sofa, skillfully mended on one of the arms, a makeshift table made of painted crates, covered with a colorful cloth. They were the signs of a life of strict economy, but lived with dignity. "Laurel," he began, feeling he needed to say something that had been growing inside him since he discovered where she worked. "About what you told me earlier." She made a gesture, as if to downplay the subject. "Don't worry, I don't expect any special treatment at work. I didn't tell you to make you feel obligated to do anything." "It's not that," Rowan said, taking a deep breath to gather his courage. "It's about Maisie." Laurel's posture changed instantly, becoming protective. "What about her?" On an impulse, Rowan moved closer and took Laurel's hand, looking into her eyes with sincerity. The dish towel fell, forgotten, to the floor between them. "Laurel, I need you to know that I am very fond of your daughter. She is a special girl. Smart, curious, generous. I have never seen a child so full of a desire to learn." Laurel swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on his, as if trying to read his deepest intentions. "I want you to be sure of one thing," he continued, his voice firm but gentle. "I will guarantee her education, all the way through college if she wants. Maisie will be able to be whatever she dreams of." The words hung in the air between them, charged with promise and possibility. Laurel stood motionless, as if fearing that any movement might make the offer disappear. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I can. Because she deserves it. Because no one did that for me when I was a child, and I know how much it would have meant." Laurel clutched the dish towel she had retrieved from the floor, her fingers gripping the fabric as if it were an anchor, in the storm of emotions sweeping through her. Laurel's eyes filled with tears, glistening in the soft light of the lamp. I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice choked with emotion. I never imagined someone could look at my daughter and see all of that. There was a raw vulnerability in her words, the outpouring of a mother who had always believed in her daughter's potential, but feared the world would never see beyond their circumstances. Rowan smiled, feeling an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time. I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me and my mother. A tear rolled down Laurel's face, followed by another. She didn't try to hide them or wipe them away. She cried in silence, like someone used to processing emotions without making a sound, a skill likely developed to avoid worrying Maisie on difficult nights. From the bathroom, Maisie's voice called out, "Mommy, I'm done with my bath." Laurel took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I'm coming, sweetie," she replied, her voice surprisingly steady. Then, turning to Rowan, "I need to help her dry off and get into her pajamas." He nodded, understanding that she needed this moment to process what had happened. "I'll be going then. It's getting late." Laurel walked him to the door, still in silence. As he was about to leave, she lightly touched his arm. "Rowan," she said, using his first name for the first time. "Thank you, not just for what you're offering, but for seeing Maisie, for really seeing who she is." The simplicity and sincerity of those words hit him with force. It wasn't just gratitude for financial support, it was the acknowledgement of something deeper, more significant. "Tell her I'll be back soon," he promised. Laurel nodded, a small smile appearing through her tears. "She'll hold you to that promise." "It's a promise I intend to keep," Rowan replied firmly. As he walked down the building stairs, he felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. Outside, night had completely fallen over the city, but inside him, something shone like the sunrise. A promise made not only to Maisie and Laurel, but also to the memory of his mother and the boy he once was. A promise of possibilities. The morning after his visit to Laurel and Maisie's home, Rowan arrived at the office early. As the elevator ascended to the 25th floor, his thoughts remained on the previous night's revelation. Laurel worked in the same building as him, cleaning the hallways he walked daily, invisible to executives like himself. The idea bothered him deeply, not just because of the surprising coincidence, but because of what it symbolized, worlds so physically close, yet separated by invisible and almost insurmountable barriers. "Rebecca," he called as soon as his assistant arrived, "I need you to locate the supervisor of the contracted cleaning crew. Today, if possible." At 10 in the morning, a woman with graying hair and a rigid posture entered his office. "Martha Collins, supervisor for Clean Pro," she introduced herself, visibly nervous to be in the president's office. "How can I help you, Mr. Hayes?" "Please, have a seat," Rowan invited. "I wanted to talk about one of your employees." "Laurel Sullivan." The woman's expression immediately shifted to one of concern. "Has there been a problem with her service? Laurel is one of our best employees, I can assure you." "There's no problem at all," Rowan reassured her. "In fact, it's the opposite. Could you tell me about her professional history?" Martha visibly relaxed. "Laurel has been with us for almost 3 years. She starts at 5 in the morning on the north wing and then moves to this floor in the afternoon. Never late, never absent. The kind of employee every supervisor wishes they had more of." Rowan nodded, absorbing the information. While he arrived in his imported car for another day of work, Laurel had already been in the same building for hours, working in silence. "Could you ask her to come to my office tomorrow at 9? And I'd also like a copy of her resume, if possible." The next day, promptly at 9, Laurel entered his office. She wore the grey uniform of the cleaning company, her hair tied in a firm bun. In her eyes, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "You sent for me, Mr. Hayes." The formality in her voice contrasted with the hours they had shared in her home just 2 days before, talking about dreams and memories. "Please, Laurel." "In here. It's just Rowan," he said, indicating the chair in front of him. "Have a seat." She obeyed, but remained tense, her hands nervously clutching the cleaning cloth she carried, as if it were a talisman. "I was looking at your resume," he began. "Before Maisie was born, you worked for 2 years in customer service at the Callaway's department store. And you even completed a year of business administration at the community college." Laurel nodded, surprised he knew these details. "Yes, unfortunately, I had to drop out when I found out I was pregnant. I needed to work full-time." Rowan took a deep breath, mentally organizing what he wanted to say. "I have a proposal for you," he said finally. "I want you to come work for the company's permanent staff, business hours, a decent salary, an opportunity to grow." The surprise on Laurel's face was evident. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "To start, at the 10th floor reception," Rowan continued. "Your previous customer service experience would be valuable. And over time, depending on your performance and interest, you could grow within the company." Laurel remained silent for a long moment, as if trying to determine if this was real or some kind of cruel test. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice little more than a whisper. "Because you deserve a chance, because your daughter deserves to see her mother grow professionally, and because my company needs people with your work ethic and integrity." Laurel looked down at her hands, still clutching the cleaning cloth. "I don't want charity." The firmness in her voice revealed a pride that years of hardship had failed to diminish. "It's not charity, it's respect," Rowan replied simply. Their eyes met, and something silent passed between them, a mutual understanding that transcended words. "When would I start?" she asked at last. "Monday, if that's possible." Laurel took a deep breath, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face, shame and gratitude, fear and hope. "Thank you," she said simply. "I won't let you down." "Of that," Rowan replied with a smile, "I never had a doubt." The transformation in the following months was extraordinary on multiple levels. Laurel adapted quickly to the new position, her natural intelligence and dedication impressing colleagues and superiors. In just 2 weeks, she had mastered systems and procedures that others took months to learn. In her 3rd month, she was promoted to administrative assistant in the Human Resources Department, with a salary that allowed her and Maisie to move to a larger apartment, still in the same neighborhood, but with a separate room for Maisie and a small balcony where they planted flowers on weekends. For Maisie, the change was equally significant. With her mother's new schedule, she no longer had to wait for Mrs. Miller after school. And with the better salary, she now attended science classes on Saturdays, fueling her dream of becoming a doctor, and wore uniforms and shoes that weren't second-hand. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurred in Rowan. The man who once lived only for business and financial results now organized his schedule around something completely different: his weekend visits to Laurel and Maisie's home. It began with casual invitations for Sunday lunches, evolved into trips to the park, visits to the Science Museum, and finally became an unbreakable tradition. Every Sunday, promptly at 2 in the afternoon, his car would park in front of their building, and always, without fail, Maisie would be sitting on the front step waiting for him, swinging her legs impatiently. That smile when she saw him, as pure and luminous as only a child's joy can be, reminded Rowan of everything that truly mattered in life, of values that financial statements and annual reports could never measure. Sometimes he brought gifts, children's books illustrating the human body, small toy microscopes, educational games. But he soon realized that what Maisie valued most was simply his presence, the stories he told, the games they played together, the questions he answered with infinite patience. For Laurel, those Sundays also became precious. The conversations between her and Rowan, once cautious and formal, evolved into something deeper and more comfortable. They shared childhood memories, discussed books, exchanged perspectives on life, building without realizing it, a connection neither of them had planned. And so, almost imperceptibly, Rowan became part of their lives, not as a benefactor or a boss, but as something far more valuable: chosen family. On a particularly sunny Sunday, 5 months after Laurel started her new life at the company, the 3 of them were returning from a trip to the botanical garden. Maisie had talked the entire way about the medicinal plants the guide had shown, reinforcing her desire to become a doctor, to help people get well, as she always said. While Laurel prepared a snack in the kitchen, Rowan helped Maisie with a puzzle on the living room table, a 200-piece map of the human body he had brought the week before. "Wait a minute," the little girl said suddenly, interrupting her explanation of where the lungs were. "I have something to show you." She ran to her room and returned holding a carefully folded piece of paper in her small hands. "I made this for you," she said, holding out the paper with a seriousness unusual for her 5 years. Rowan accepted the gift, unfolding it gently. It was a colorful drawing made with markers and crayons, much more elaborate than her previous works. It showed 3 figures holding hands in front of a house, a small one in the middle, clearly Maisie, and 2 adults, one on each side. In the sky, a smiling sun and V-shaped birds. Above, written in large, careful letters, "My best friend." Something happened inside Rowan at that moment, an emotion so intense and unexpected that he felt his voice disappear completely. His eyes filled with tears he couldn't hold back. In all his years of professional success, amidst awards, recognitions, and million-dollar contracts, he had never received anything that touched him as deeply as that simple drawing made by small hands. Maisie, concerned by his silence, asked, "You don't like it?" Rowan took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion that threatened to overflow. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received in my entire life," he finally managed to say. The girl smiled, relieved, and turned her attention back to the puzzle as if she hadn't just offered something of inestimable value. From the kitchen doorway, Laurel watched the scene, her own eyes moist. She knew that drawing well, Maisie had worked on it for days, erasing and redoing details, determined to make it perfect for her best friend. 2 weeks later, the day of the new school recital arrived. A play about the 4 seasons cats where Maisie would play Autumn. Unlike the first time, when Rowan had sat alone in the audience, this time he and Laurel arrived at the auditorium together. She held a small bouquet of yellow and orange flowers, the colors of Autumn and Maisie's favorites. He carried the carefully folded drawing in the inner pocket of his blazer, like a talisman. They found seats in the 2nd row. The auditorium was full, with families chatting excitedly as they waited for the show to begin. Some parents who already knew Laurel from school events greeted her with renewed smiles, noticing the subtle changes in her appearance, the well-chosen outfit, the neat haircut, the confidence that now emanated from her. "Nervous?" Rowan asked, noticing how she constantly adjusted the bouquet. "A little," Laurel admitted. "She's rehearsed so much. She wants so badly to do well today." "She's going to be amazing," he assured her, lightly touching her hand. When the curtains opened, the stage revealed a forest scene with paper trees in different shades. Maisie appeared in the right corner, wearing a dress in autumn colors and a crown of golden leaves. For a moment, her eyes anxiously scanned the audience until they found what they were looking for: her mother and Rowan, side by side, smiling at her. A smile of pure relief and happiness lit up her face. She positioned herself confidently, waiting for her cue. When the music began, Maisie took a step forward and began her dance. Her movements were graceful, precise, a world away from the nervous girl of the first performance. When it was her turn to speak, her voice came out clear and steady. "Autumn is a time of change and transformation. The leaves fall so new ones can be born. It is an end, but also a beginning." Rowan felt something touch his hand. Laurel's fingers found his in the dim light of the auditorium, intertwining naturally. He returned the gesture, feeling a quiet certainty settle in his heart. On stage, Maisie continued her dance, each movement executed with precision and joy. From time to time, her eyes would find the audience, always finding the faces she was looking for, like safe anchors in a sea of expectations. When the music reached its climax, she lifted her chin and smiled, the same smile that lit up Rowan's Sundays. The most important people were there, watching her with pride. And she knew, with the absolute certainty that only children possess, that from that day forward, she would never again be sad because she felt alone. In the audience, holding Laurel's hand as he watched Maisie dance, Rowan understood that he wouldn't be either. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.